Before we begin the debate showcase, let's go over some of the things that are different about this debate. The first thing is that this debate will be made up of a new set of speakers. 8 speakers will be joining us on stage. These speakers will be 2 teams of 4. They have never been put together on a team before. They likely have never met at all. So they will be coming to the stage to display for you outstanding debate. These speakers have been specifically chosen by your judges yesterday.
Scholars, but 8 speakers from such a big group of so many great debaters is not enough. There has been many nominated speakers which we have now chosen to become the panel of judges for today's debate. Can you step back a bit?
At the end of this debate, we will be hosting a community forum. This is a chance for you to tell us your opinion on the motion at hand. We know that there are only 8 people on stage here and about 600 of you out there. We want everyone to have the opportunity to share their thoughts with the community.
And scholars, one more thing we should not forget is the spirit of this debate. Let's remember to be kind and cautious and constructive when providing your own ideas. Also, please consider the fact that these debaters are going to be debating on stage in front of all of you. So please remember to be respectful.
And without further ado, it is now time to find out who will be joining us here on stage. Let us begin with the affirmative team. We're good.
It shows up on the confidence.
Our first speaker is no stranger to the big stage. Joining us from the city of Shinzu, from the International Bilingual School at Shinzu Science Park, we welcome to the stage Mark Kuo.
And joining us from Alexander Mackenzie High School, Robbie Huang.
Our third speaker on the affirmative team comes to us from Fairview International School, Subang Jaya, Raunith Manuel.
Joining us from Laijai Memorial Omega International School, Tara Sathranantham.
Scholars, give it up for your affirmative team. And now, the negative team.
Joining us from the Philippine School, Dubai, Mary Francesca Graffil.
And now, from Bel Air High School, it is Vedant Ramabharajan.
I was meant to take that one. Joining us from National Mathematics and Science College, Mingtiep Nguyen.
And rounding out the debate showcase from right here in the Philippines, from Southville International School and Colleges, it is Dalton Emmanuel Mojica. Scholars, give it up for your negative team. And now, joining us in our VIP front row will be your judges for today's debate. Your first judge is Manur Kamran.
Our second judge is Elissa Kong.
Followed by Anthony Hugo Ziborowski.
Followed by Rabia Kakbanda.
Also joining us is Aaron Eng.
There's more. Next, we have Shaheen Fatma.
Followed by Vichara Sem.
Next is Nicholas Kaiteng Lo.
And finally, Findulo Maenge. Scholars, give it up for your panel of judges. We have an affirmative team. We have a negative team. We have a panel of judges. Scholars, what are we missing? Scholars. Indeed, Richard is missing. Today's motion is Richard. Today's motion, be it resolved that leaders should be selected from the margins. The juniors debated this yesterday. Let's see how the seniors do. Scholars on stage, you have 15 minutes to prepare. That leaders should be selected from the margins. Your time is up. Scholars, make some noise for the first speaker from the affirmative team.
Honorable adjudicators, my supportive team, respectable opponents. I, Mark Kuo, of the International Bilingual School at Hsinchu Science Park, Taiwan, am the first speaker and will introduce my team's stance before passing the floor to my second and third speakers, Robbie and Tara, who will further our arguments before our last speaker, Ron, sweeps the opposing stance off its feet and closes our claim that leaders should be selected from the margins. First, we would like to define the terms and present a slight rebuttal. We believe that those on that margins refers not just to the periphery, but to the marginalized, which the prestigious Merriam-Webster defines as to relegate to an unimportant or powerless position within a society or group. Notice how there is no mention of a majority or a minority population. Next, the definition of selected from Merriam-Webster as well means chosen from a number or group by fitness or preference. We, the affirmative team, will not take the stance that leaders from the margins should be chosen by a twisted process. We believe that those on the margins shall be selected by the natural process of democracy and will be selected in the future. Furtherly, we'd like to dispute the idea that those already in power shall stay in power. There is a basis for this on precedent, on supposed education, yet there are also cases of corruption. But we, the affirmative, will talk no further. We, the affirmative, will not take such a negative outlook that those on the margins shall stay on the margins. We believe, and we will show why they will eventually become the leaders of tomorrow. With the definition in mind, our contentions are, 1, that the margins are also the majority. 2, that those on the margins shall solve the problems of those on the margins much more easily, making this place a better world. And 3, that those on the margins are more relatable. Now to move on to my first point, I'll be talking about the poor, race, and on women. First off, imagine working a blue-collar job while a businessman sitting in an office, standing on a high golden chair, rules the world. That is not a world that we can relate to. That is not a world that the majority of people can relate to. In a population of a village of 100, 6 people will own over 50% of the wealth. The rest, the other 94 people, they will be left to scramble for the rest. Those people are powerless on a monetary basis. Those people are on the margins. If we are to select a person from the poor, if we are to select a person from the fourth estate, if we are to select a person from the middle class, they will surely be able to rule the world better because they know the majority of the people, and they'll be selected by the majority of people. Now, the majority of the people in this room are also a person of color. The majority of the people around the world are people of color. In South Africa, having a majority of people of color did not stop them from having segregation. It did not stop them from suffering until one man, one very specific man, Mandela, a black man, decided that it was time to change his nation, and he did. He suffered in jail. He was an inspiration to all those incarcerated for fighting marginalization, and that went to jail for it. By another example, Gandhi. Gandhi rejected the British minority, even though the British minority were in rule. He went on a hunger strike in order to save the majority of people, the people of his race. You guys couldn't even stand a couple delays for lunch. Keep that in mind. Now, 51% of the people in this world are also of a marginalized group. I would like the audience to think of what that group is. You have that answer right. That group are women. The speaker is a hypocrite for being on the stage, talking about women's issues. We, the affirmative, are hypocrites to believe that the majority ought to speak, even though our stage is filled with a male-dominant speaking group. We believe that women ought to have the right to speak because they are the majority, and in a democracy which has proven to be the majority ruling system of this world, majorities take the rule. Keep that in mind, and we shall change the world on that basis. As first speaker, I've thus given you the big innings of our contentions and organized the team structure. I will allow our other 3 speakers to provide further evidence to the debate. And I will close by saying this. We are not just talking of a world on the margins. We're talking about a world comprised of the margins. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. Which one do you think he values more? I think it's time to use our ears to listen to those on the margins. Thank you.
Thank you, affirmative team. Negative team, you have 1 minute to prepare.
All right, scholars, can we give a round of applause for the first speaker for the negative team?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am the first speaker from the negative side, and my team and I are here to argue that leaders should not be selected from the margins. I know that you have been empowered by the speech previously said by the affirmative team, but do not be swayed. My team and I are here to argue that leaders should not be chosen just because you feel bad for them. Just because they have been oppressed for so many years, that does not quantify as a category for them to be chosen. We argue that leaders should be chosen for their effectiveness. Effective leadership should be above diversity. First, we argue that the resources of a leader is important. More privileged people have more resources to help those who are in the margins. Unfortunately, this is true. Those who are marginalized have less opportunities to gain the education that is needed or the money that is needed to properly help those who are on the margins. Next is that we need a leader who has experience. Unfortunately, once again, those who are on the margins are underrepresented. They have been excluded from several different things, and they do not have the experience as of now that can be used to lead a nation. And next, we argue that we should base our rulers on merit, not on social status. Just because someone has been marginalized for so long, that does not give them a free pass to suddenly have marginalized points to gain the upper hand. Just because we are now starting to have diversity does not automatically mean that those who are marginalized have an upper hand on the position of power. Positions of power should be chosen because they have the resources and the responsibility and the skills to lead a nation, not because of their social status. Next, we argue about the reverse narrative. One of our team members have stated that in Vietnam, a marginalized communist community enacted a purge on the rich, even though those who are on the rich did not have any negative provocations towards those who were marginalized. Unfortunately, this is how the whole term reverse racism was invented. Because marginalized people have been marginalized for so long, of course there's going to be some sort of bitter seed at the bottom of their stomachs. And we argue that by choosing positions of power just because of this reason that they are marginalized, this will turn into an act of revenge. Next, by choosing only leaders based solely on the fact that they are marginalized might make it harder for the society to succeed. Because of course, since they are marginalized, they will have a bias towards those in their marginalized community, meaning that they will be only seeing from one perspective. And once again, we state that leaders and positions of power should be chosen not because of their social status, but because they have the skill set to lead a country. Yeah. Well, our final stance on this is that we should let privileged people help the marginalized to be equal first. Then we can choose our leaders on equal footing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. That was great.
And time is now up. We now welcome to the front of the stage the second speaker from the affirmative team.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, honorable judges, esteemed colleagues, and worthy opponents. My name is Robbie, and I'm the second speaker for the affirmative side for the notion that leaders should be chosen from the marginalized. Now, I would first like to start off my speech by rebutting a few points made by the opposition. Now, first, the opposition has said that we shouldn't choose them just because we feel bad for them. Have we ever felt bad for the people that we have chosen into power? No. When has our first speaker ever said that? Never. Never once has he ever stated that. So why make that assumption, first of all? Secondly, it says that they're chosen for their effectiveness. Are the presidents that we've chosen or the leaders that we've chosen in our society not effective, even if they are from the marginalized? Think about Obama. Was he effective? Of course he was effective. I've thought about Martin Luther King. Yes, Gandhi. All of these people that were marginalized, coming out here to stand up for their communities, for their people, they have been effective. And now I'll move on to my first point. Now, I would like to say that the marginalized understand the pains and suffering and the struggles of the people that they are with. Now, firstly, I would like to give an example. We all know Barack Obama. Elected in 2008, he did many great deeds. Firstly, he ended the war in Iraq. Secondly, he supported the LGBTQ marriage. And thirdly, he was able to start the important added public health care for people that do not have the money to get important health care or basic human needs. And secondly, I would like to start off with Martin Luther King. We all know him for his great deeds as an advocate for human rights. As well, some of his great achievements have been the Great March on Washington, where over 200,000 people showed up to fight for the civil rights and economic equality for Black people. And finally, he was able to legislate and fought for Rosa Parks, who was arrested due to sitting at the front of a bus. And so he fought, and soon the Supreme Court ruled that segregation on bus was unconstitutional. And so, Honorable Judge, I would like to say that for the opposition to win, they must give solid evidence and prove that the decision and benefits of choosing leaders that are not from the marginalized outweigh the benefits of choosing leaders from the marginalized. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And time. Can we please give a round of applause for the second negative speaker?
Mic test. All right. Salutations, honorable adjudicators, esteemed affirmatives, and fellow speakers of the negative side. I am Dalton Emmanuel Mojica from Southville International School and Colleges, Philippines, here to extend the debate and argue against the motion that leaders should be selected from the margins. So first of all, I would like to start off with a great point. We are not saying that we should not pick people who are marginalized, but we are saying that we should choose people who are qualified. We should not pick people who are marginalized just because they are marginalized. I would like to point you to a definition: meritocracy. It is a political system in which economic and political power are vested in individual people based on talent and their capabilities of leading a country. And with this, I would like to continue on with some rebuttals, actually. The affirmative has stated that democracy will automatically select good people by implying that the majority of a national selection process will actually result in a candidate that will be for the benefit of the majority of the people. And I would like to say that this is simply not the case. We can look at the current political climate in the United States, for example, with Donald Trump, or even here in the Philippines with Rodrigo Duterte. These people were chosen by the public. I would like to say that the statements made by the affirmative are very idyllic presentations of selecting leaders from the margins. These are one-sided presentations because marginalized people also view from one perspective. See, by voting for leaders that actually have experience and resources, we can actually help the marginalized instead of letting them deal with the situation on their own without funding and without support. We should first level the playing field before we actually elect them just because they are marginalized, right? Additionally, I would like to reiterate the point that we should choose a leader that is qualified and not just those that we see are marginalized just because they are marginalized. And with that, I'm also saying that their statements of 6 people own 50% of the wealth is not necessarily bad, because wealth is actually needed in order to help society progress. And if we have people who actually can use this wealth and has experience in dealing with this, we can actually uplift everyone instead of letting the marginalized perpetuate things such as reverse discrimination. Because when marginalized people tend to have they have a tendency to let their hate or anger of their oppression to be applied to those who have oppressed them before, thus perpetuating the cycle of violence and being a net negative for society as a whole. And because of this, we believe that we should not pick marginalized people just because they're marginalized. Once again, we should pick people who are qualified and not just those who are marginalized for the sake of it. And with that, I would like to urge everyone to vote for our side because, number one, the empirics are on our side. The affirmative has not stated any examples of any president or leader of a country or otherwise that actually did not come from wealth or prior political experience. And because of this, we believe that these are important factors in deciding who is good for our nation, who is good for our territory. And second, helping marginalized people is a priority, not by just simply electing them, but by having leaders that can actually cope and handle the issues. Because what I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, is that leaders already know the problems, but do these unexperienced people that they're saying to be picked because of marginalization, do they know the solutions to these problems? And with that, may the winning judgment be sealed by my next speakers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, scholars. Let's give him a round of applause. And now, speakers, you have 1 minute to prepare.
And time is now up. We now welcome to the stage the third speaker from the affirmative team.
Good morning, honorable adjudicators, my fellow opponents, my respected teammates, and the phenomenal audience. I'm the third speaker of Team Affirmative, and today's motion is that leaders should be selected from the margins, and we, the proposition, strongly believe this. I would like to start off my stance by refuting some of the points made by the honorable second speaker of Team Negative. The second speaker of the negative team stated that they aren't stating that marginalized people shouldn't be picked, but rather qualified people should be picked. But our second speaker has already stated that we do choose people from marginalized communities who are effective leaders, such as Martin Luther King Jr. He also stated that we did not give examples from about people from marginalized communities who have become leaders. But again, we did. We give examples about Martin Luther King Jr., Barack Obama, Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, as stated by my previous speakers. Now, on to my own constructives. Now, what is leadership? We all strive to be leaders. Leadership is a process of influence, an omnipresent feature present in all human societies. A key obstacle many leaders face is being stigmatized as an outsider who is not suitable for leadership. And these so-called stigmatized people are mostly marginalized, deviant minority groups who are almost never given a chance. Ladies and gentlemen, everyone in this world should be equal, regardless of their gender, age, sex, ethnicity, race, or religion. Everyone should be given a chance. And what is this chance? It is an opportunity to prove themselves, to show our global community what they have to offer this world, and act as a symbol of hope for members of marginalized communities. These marginalized people, if they're elected as leaders, they will not only understand the conventional systems of our society, but also the difficulties faced by those from the margins, their discrimination, their desire to be included and to be a part of society. They will be the real change in our world. These people who understand our two-faced world. These marginalized leaders will not only benefit our privileged communities, but also they will also take action to ensure these marginalized communities do not stay this way and are given a voice. And what is this voice? It is a voice to tell the world that they will no longer stay marginalized, to demand to be a part of our society, our global community. And there are so many marginalized communities in today's world. Women, children, Hindus, with a plethora of people who want to make a change. And selecting leaders from these marginalized communities shows that our world leaves absolutely no one behind, that we operate as a global community. It makes our world more inclusive, and this is one of the only ways we can overcome the barriers that hamper both human development and progress towards global peace. The 16th Sustainable Development Global Goal is peace, justice, and strong institutions. If we ever want to achieve this goal, global peace, justice for people, and strong institutions, if we are ever expected to achieve this goal, we must bring justice to these communities by giving them a representative who will help achieve peace by unifying global networks and thereby strengthening our civilization. And with this, I would like to conclude by saying we, the affirmative team, strongly believe that leaders should be selected from the marginalized communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Negative team, you have 1 minute.
All right, scholars, can we give a round of applause for the third negative speaker?
How do you make this shorter? Sorry. Don't worry about it. It's my fault. Good start. Okay. Is this good? Yeah, thank you. There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, from the beginning and from the get-go of this debate, the affirmative team has been trying to frame as if they are standing for progressive social justice goals. For example, anti-discrimination, anti-bigotry, inclusivity, very progressive things. However, do they really mean what they've been saying? We, as the negative team, believe that we should not choose leaders from the marginalized community, and we will provide you with concrete examples onto why this is true. First of all, we have noticed that the affirmative team has picked a several number of leaders to prove their point. However, I would like to point to you out that these are very exclusive examples. The affirmative team are cherry picking because the majority of marginalized leaders who are chosen have either failed or not been chosen at all because they were overthrown by the system that facilitate their oppressing. And I will prove to you this point in my second argument. So examples for example, Obama. Obama is a good leader and we all like him. However, we also know that he also have a lot of drawbacks. And even if he is a perfect president, there's a lot of things and a lot of goals that Obama wanted to do but was not able to do. Because, for example, in the case of Obama, the Republicans have won way more seats than the Democrats in the Congress. And hence, a lot of his goals and ideologies were not carried out because he was, again, in the marginalized. So, bringing to you today, I have two main arguments. First of all, the leaders should be chosen by their effectiveness and based on their meritocracy, not just because they are marginalized. Marginalized people do not need your pity. Marginalized people don't need you to feel sorry for them and give them the privilege and give them the power. Why? Imagine a situation where you have a homeless person and you give them a bunch of money. Now, this is exactly what happens in a lot of countries where they try to eliminate poverty, but it doesn't actually help the situation. The homeless person would just receive money and either spend it on alcohol or spend it on things that are not helping his own situation. So in this case, although this might seem like a gross generalization, we have to admit that marginalized people in general do not have all of the most adequate resources and the most conditions in order for them to be effective leaders. And so choosing leaders from only marginalized community would devastate the political system. Selecting this ludicrous way would destabilize the political climate. For example, as I've mentioned earlier, marginalized people sometimes most of the time, have a clear feeling that they are being oppressed. And whether or not this feeling is true, they have easily provoked psychology. And imagine a group of people who were being marginalized and oppressed for so long, as in the case of my own country, Vietnam. Now, A bit of history about Vietnam. When the communist government of the North Vietnam taken control of Vietnam, they were a government made by the marginalized people, so for example, the peasants or the working classes. However, immediately after they have taken power, this government has enacted a purge against their own original oppressors, so AKA the rich people, the nobles, the ones who they deem their own enemies. And they have enacted massive execution without trial of thousands of nobles and past landlords. Thousands of people were killed, and thousands of people have been proven nowadays to be innocent. People who were actually supporting the revolution and supporting the freeing of their country. As we can see from this example, marginalized people, we have to admit, are exposed to less favorable condition. And when you suddenly give a lot of power to the people who were so hungry for power for so long, there's a lot of chances that they will go wrong and they will turn on their own oppressor, and there will be a lot of violence. Second of all, my second argument would be that not only this is bad, it will create a backlash if we choose people because they are from a specific group. So this is essentially reverse discrimination. Prioritizing a type of people, no matter the place in the social stratification, intensify and reiterated the difference and the gap existing in society. By doing this, you are directly encouraging social antagonism, whether by class, race, or gender, and you're discouraging cooperation between these distinct groups, which is what we are striving for a better society. You're pitting groups in society against one another. So the consequences will be massive. You will result in an unstable political climate, a fractured and polarized society, torn between equality, inclusivity, progressive ideologies, you might call it, and meritocracy of actually choosing the effective leader for your country. This is undesirable and will only worsen the situation. Even if the marginalized people are somehow chosen, how can you make sure that they wouldn't become corrupt by all the power that they're suddenly getting? The truth is, a lot of leaders who came into position of power that came from marginalized group will either conform to the previous oppressing system that has been laid out to them or quickly overturn. For examples being the case of Obama that I've already stated. So the people chosen based on their merits would have been way better. For example, just because people are privileged doesn't mean they cannot help people who are underprivileged. Abraham Lincoln have freed the slaves, even though he is himself a white man, and fight a war for it. These are concrete examples on why letting people with actual ability and actual merit to lead your country and help the marginalized people stepping out and not being marginalized anymore is actually a way better idea of letting the marginalized people just running around and trying to figure it out on themselves. We need to cooperate. So we really do care for the marginalized community, but we want a good, stable, effective, and guaranteed way of making this work. We believe that the affirmative team's ideologies, even though they might sound good on theory, is a naive utopia at best. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now, debaters, you have 1 minute to prepare.
And time is now up. We now welcome to the stage the final speaker from the affirmative team.
Thanks, Skittles. If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. Now, this quote was spoken by John Quincy Adams, and the affirmative team agrees with this quote, and it justifies the reason why marginalized people should become leaders. A good day to the adjudicators as well as the negative team. I am Ron, the fourth speaker of the affirmative team, and today I will state the facts and secure the victory for the affirmative team. Now, basically, the points that our first three speakers have mentioned are clear and concise. These marginalized people are from the majority, and they understand what the majority needs and what the majority has. So they can make decisions that can help them. For example, a non-marginalized leader, someone who's not from a marginalized place, Donald Trump, he grew up in an upper-class family. And when he deports these different people from America, he doesn't understand what they feel and what they think and what is going through with their head. So he's just causing them pain without knowing what they're doing. Now, basically, another point which can be stated is from the WSC information, The Black Man by Stevie Wonder, the song. Now, the negative team speaks about how if they choose marginalized leaders, it won't help and it's not a good decision as they're not qualified. So try and debunk the entire song, as the entire song is full of marginalized leaders and how they helped. Now, the third speaker, now they also talk about how they still, like we, the affirmative team, selected exclusive leaders and we only show a few examples. Yet, you talk about how if you give money to a poor man, they'll buy alcohol and drugs. That's pretty exclusive, as well as hypocritical. And now, yes, and basically what we're trying to say is marginalized leaders, they can help take care of those who are in need, as they have different perspectives. They have a diverse thought process. They can think about the entire country. They can think about everybody. Now, basically another point that has been mentioned is that, sorry. The negative team has brought up the point that the youths are not suitable for the position of leadership. That was by the first speaker. However, we disagree, and I tell you why. As we have allowed our youngest member who could qualify for the juniors to present our closing, state the facts, and secure the victory for the team. Thank you.
Thank you, affirmative team. Negative team, you have 1 final minute.
All right, scholars, let's put our hands together for the final speaker of today's debate. Do you need me to adjust your mic? I got you. Sorry, bro.
You're good.
Like this?
Yeah, thank you. Love you too.
Oh, I'm doing it the wrong way. Okay.
All right.
I think.
I can just take it. Like, that's fine too. Yeah, let's take it.
I broke it.
That's okay. Hey, can everyone hear me? Okay. I'm Vedant. I'm from the great state of Texas in the United States, and I'm the 4th and final speaker of the negative team supporting that leadership positions to go to people that are not in marginalized area. My fellow teammate Dalton brings up a really important question. What is the standard to be a leader in today's world? I think the answer to that is not where they're from or their past. That means we're not choosing leaders based on whether they were marginalized or unmarginalized. Instead, we choose leaders in society based on how qualified they are, how educated they are, how much resources they can bring to the table, and how experienced they are. On that note, let's go to the affirmatives arguments, which is rested on 3 specific points. First, they tell you that past leaders have been very successful when they are marginalized. The biggest problem here is that they're cherry-picking most of their examples. Let's look at the examples that they bring up. First, they talk about Martin Luther King Jr. And second, they talk about Barack Obama, the first black president in the United States. Here's the problem. Barack Obama is the only black president in the United States. Let's look at every single other president in the United States history. All of those presidents brought resources. They were educated, and they were experienced in the craft of leadership. And that turned out to be pretty good to the United States, as the United States is one of the wealthiest and probably the most politically influential country in the in the globe, sorry. However, behind that was not just one black president. It was a many and multitude of other white, yes, but more importantly, experienced leaders that brought a lot of resource and educated stuff to the table. Then let's go to the second point that they bring up. They tell you that the marginalized community knows the problem of society and can then contribute to changing it. Here's the problem. We shouldn't be feeling bad for people in marginalized society. Instead, the narrative of the negative side, which has stood through the entire round, has been not to feel bad for these people, not to empathize with these people, but instead to help these people. And the only way we can do that is by electing leaders that are A, smart, B, educated, and C, experienced and can actually help society. At that point, let's go to the very last thing that they bring up. They tell you that we need to be empathizing with people that are marginalized and they deserve a leadership position. I think the problem there just comes to you on the surface. We shouldn't be feeling bad for these people. Again, we should be helping those people because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether they had the leadership position or whether someone who is wealthy had the leadership position. What's important is whether or not these people were helped and benefited at the end of the day. And whether that be through a white man or whether that be through a black man, as long as the black man is helped, it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, they're benefiting. Even then, the best thing, the most important argument in today's round and today's entire debate that we've brought to you is that voting for the affirmative isn't going to stop the problem. And here's why. My partner, one of my teammates brings up a really important point. Let's look to one big example in Vietnam when a marginalized leader came through. What ended up happening was the overthrowing of the previous leaders, and that ended up creating instability inside of Vietnam. What we tell you is marginalized leaders don't end up helping society, they just create unsustainability, create problems within the nation, and just make society worse overall. That's why we're telling you we need to be voting leaders that know what they're doing, have the resources to do so, and can actually help the betterment of society. At that point, look at the 2 reasons why you're voting for the negative side in today's round. First is we give you pretty solid empirics and pretty solid examples as to why unmarginalized leaders and privileged leaders actually help to the betterment of society. The first is Thomas Jefferson. He may have started out very humbly. However, we tell you that over time, he became richer and became more politically influential. However, he didn't just help himself. He actually helped those people that were marginalized. But second, and more importantly, let's look to Abraham Lincoln, who was a white male himself. However, what ended up happening is he passed the Emancipation Proclamation, who ended up freeing slaves and overall helping African Americans inside of the United States. What you should take from these two examples is that a white man doesn't help himself and doesn't help his own community. A white man helps the entirety of society. A black man doesn't have to be the only person elected to help the black community. Anyone can do that. It's not the color of your skin, it's the ideals you have and the ideas you can have to help society. At the end of the day, I leave you with this. Vote an effective leader, vote an experienced leader, and vote an educated leader. Not just someone based on the color of their skin or what their past was. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And also, scholars, can we put our hands together for all these debaters up here today and for this amazing debate they have presented to us today.
And now, with the completion of the showcase itself, we would like to invite our panel of judges in a minute to rise and exit the room. But first, let's go over the rules for what is about to happen next. We are about to take part in the forum. In a minute, we are going to be opening these mic stands here at the sides of the stage for you to come down and share your thoughts with the community. But we must highlight a few things first. When you come down, remember, this is not a chance for you to provide feedback to the speakers here on stage, but it's rather a chance for you to share your thoughts on the topic at hand today. Please also keep your comments brief. There are many people who would like to share, so do not start with, I have 2 things to say. You only have 1 thing to say. You will also be limited to 30 seconds, so think through what you want to say in advance to make sure that you can stay within this time constraint. And with that, judges, please rise and follow Robert to our super secret judging chamber, known as right outside. Stay inside challenge. All right, the mics are now open. Please, for those of you who want to share, please come down and line up.
I'm going to be saying that I'm agreeing with negative and that I like the fact that you're saying diversity for diversity's sake is not.
Don't direct it towards anybody. I'm going to time you for 30 seconds. Once 30 seconds is up, then when you say towards anybody, do you mean the team or Colby, you good? Colby. Yeah. Brady. Oh yeah, I don't know. That's the first one.
All right, we'll begin over here on this side. Please introduce yourself and state your point.
Hello, my name is Bamas Muhammad Pasojo. I'm from Medan, Chandakumala. And I would like to say I agree with the negative point, saying that this is a point brought up by my opposing team when I was debate that diversity for diversity's sake should not be a main point. That diversity for diversity's sake does not bring essentially much help to the table. That we should pick the people for our leading roles who are qualified, educated, and well-rounded to know what they're supposed to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now moving on to Brady's side.
That's Colby.
Hi, I'm Max, and I have a question. What is the criteria for the affirmation of marginalization? How do you define someone who is marginalized? And also, when you have this criteria, doesn't this person who selects who's marginalized put them in power, thus marginalizing other people? Is that really fair? Should we decide who is marginalized and who's not? Doesn't that just marginalize people, not actually solving the problem, but making a bigger problem? So how do you define what is marginalized?
Thank you for your question. Unfortunately, it will have to remain rhetorical because we do not have time for them to reply. But thank you for your question nonetheless. We will now move over here to Brady. Yes, Brady's side.
Hi, I would just like to share my thoughts. Basically, someone a part of a marginalized group doesn't have to be someone who's not some type of privilege. A woman can be rich and still marginalized for being a woman. A black man can be rich and still marginalized for being black. Just because they're marginalized does not mean they don't have resources. And that is something that I just wish could have been touched on more in this debate. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Now over to Colby's side.
Hi, I wanted to make a point about one of the ideas that was brought up during the debate. You guys talked about having experience as being one of the key core concepts of a good leader, but what does experience entail? I feel like experience also entails having experience of being marginalized. Say you've never been in a poor community before, how can you have experience of being poor and being able to help the poor people from your own experience? Thank you.
And now over here to Brady's side.
Hi guys, my name's Richard, and I would just like to first congratulate both of you for providing a good case. However, I would just like to say that I'm confused with the case of the negative side because you guys were saying that leaders should not be picked out of pity. That's why we shouldn't pick marginalized people. But technically you're saying that as long as a marginalized person is educated, they can still be picked as a leader. So what exactly is your point? Because as long as a woman, as long as a person of a color is educated, they can still be leaders. So what exactly is your case? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Now over to Colby's side.
Hi. Okay, so I just wanted to bring up an interesting point that I think would change the direction of the debate. It would be talking about countries that aren't democratic and can't pick their leaders. So it would be really interesting to see how marginalization would affect the system of picking their leaders. Thank you.
And now over here to Bolby's side.
So I would say most of you guys, probably even all of you, talked about American politics. And even though I'd say only one of you is from America, Texas, you were the only one to really get your point across and know what you were talking about. Where everyone else is kind of just winging it and based on what they're hearing from like outside media and everything. So maybe like if you do a little more research on that and kind of get the whole point of view from everyone, that'd be a little better. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now over to Crady's side.
Hi, I just want to say that, in my opinion, the purpose of having leaders chosen from the margins is to prevent populist leaders from dominating the polls, thus eliminating the system of marginalization in place and fulfilling the goal of democracy, which is giving the people the power to influence the decisions that will ultimately affect them. Thanks.
And now over to Sender One side.
Hello, I would just like to congratulate both teams for doing a good job. You both debated really well. I just wanted to hopefully use your applications, your examples, your strategy in future debates. And I'm actually to the affirmative team. They did really well. They were very persuasive. I think they will win this debate. Thank you.
We are unfortunately running out of time. We'll only have enough time for 2 more from each side. 2 more from each side. So those of you who are unable to speak, I am sorry. But we'll move over here to Colby's Sander
number
2 side.
Okay, I just wanted to give another point for the negative team, that the three examples that the affirmative team were repeating, especially Luther King Martin Jr. and Gandhi. These two were the leaders of a revolution, but they were the leader of any nation or proper political party. So this could have been an example that marginalized people are not the only one who could understand it.
Thank you so much. Now over to Colby's side.
Brady.
I tried.
So my comment is just that for most of the debate, the context was kind of in that all leaders should be chosen from the margins, but that wasn't the motion. It was just that leaders in general. So yeah, I wanted to give that feedback.
Thank you for your thoughts. Our final 2 speakers, we'll move over here to Colby's side.
Hi, so basically one thing I think that the affirmative could be touched on was basically that how all the leaders in our society are pretty wealthy and rich, and they have they pretty much have most of the, and they're all mainly men, so most of them have the societal status and also the resources to be able to help other people, but then they still don't. So that's why there's still a lot of the poverty rate is really high, and most of the wealth is still concentrated toward the top of the society.
Thank you very much. And our final thought of the night.
Hello, hi. So I'm Miles. So basically what I understood from this debate is that the negative team argued that roles may be reversed and that the privileged may now become the oppressed, and that putting these people from minority groups will be an act of revenge. All I really have to say is that marginalized people receiving the same opportunities privileged people have is not equivalent to the idea that the roles will suddenly be reversed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, we now welcome back to the stage our panel of judges. Scholars, give it up for your panel.
Hi. So, who enjoyed the debate? Can I get a clap? Yeah. Okay, so first of all, congratulations to both teams. And I'm going to be starting our comments by talking about the affirmative team. So, the affirmative team, first of all, was very confident, very sure of their points. They had some really good evidence. They had an amazing opening, a good conclusion. And last but not least, they worked with each other. They went back to previous points, they mentioned previous speakers, and overall, amazing job.
What's your name? Rabia. Okay, so adding on to Rabia's point, the affirmative team debated extremely well, but here are a few points that you guys could take to maybe elevate the debate to the next level. So first of all, yes, you guys did set a clear definition, but sometimes we felt like your teammates didn't completely agree with your definitions, and that sometimes they kind of went off the definitions and supported their own ideas instead of actually having a link that would balance through all your arguments. And the negative team also made a lot of points, so I would say more rebuttals next time, instead of focusing on points. But overall, you guys were amazing. Thank you.
So for the negative team, they also did incredibly well. And first off, I just want to point out that their rebuttals were great, and it was just amazing. And your facts and your points were also strong. But I think if you provide more examples, it will be a little bit better.
And then just a few general remarks and feedback to both teams that next time the definitions of the kinds of leadership that we were talking about and the marginalized communities who specifically we're talking about, that was quite loosely defined. That's why there was so little engagement, because one team was talking about this kind of leadership and the other another kind. So maybe next time if we have like a standard definition of what exactly we're talking about, then we can engage a lot better. And now for who we decided was the winner.
Okay, pass it on.
I don't want to do it.
Okay, who wants to hear the results? All right. I'm not going to do the results. So.
I'm good.
They can have it. Hey, can we have a drum roll?
So, the winner. Who wants to know the winner? Let's ask Dave.
It's like they're eating lunch before announcing the final question.
Dave, who do you think is the winner? We're gonna have to wait for Dave. So, Dave doesn't want to say it either. And I'm standing here. Amazing debate, guys, by the way. And I will announce the results. So, the winner. The winner is the... Oh no! Did you not hear me? The winner for today's debate showcase is the negative team. Give it up for them!
Scholars, give it up for the negative, the affirmative, and all of the people here on stage one more time. As per tradition, debaters on stage, please rise, cross the podium, and congratulate one another on an amazing debate.
And scholars, one more time, let's have a huge round of applause for both teams, for the panel, for you as the community. And scholars, now that the showcase is finished, what's up next? It is the Scholars Show, and we need all the performers in the show to come up and check in one more time. Also, we do need to keep the front row clear for performers to be able to sit in. So if you are sitting in the front row, please find some new chairs. Any performers, please come check in at the podium.